I had an unexpectedly neat experience today that lasted for about 30 seconds. I happened to be driving near an old town I used to live in 20 years ago. Hadn't been down that way for just about that long. And all of a sudden, as I passed this particular location, the most beautiful fragrance filled my automobile. So I quickly put the windows down. I had forgotten that every day on the way into Chicago, I passed a bakery. This wasn't just a bakery, it was a cookie factory, one of the large national biscuit companies. And the smell of their famous cookies pervaded the entire area for about a square mile. Wow, is that neat. Welcome to Nightsounds, incidentally. I'm Bill Pearce. And speaking of the sense of smell, can you recall any of the odors or fragrances or aromas, both pleasant or unpleasant, that came into your olfactory senses today? Think about that for a moment as we launch into the program, Spiritual Perfume. This may sound a little bizarre or off the wall, but not being able to find music which lyrics speak of aroma or perfume or fragrance, I thought that I would try to select music that would approximate, in an audio fashion, beautiful fragrance. Is that too extreme to be understood? So, with that in mind, as we approach the subject, spiritual perfume, let's just thank God for this very beautiful sense of smell that He's given us. It can keep us from danger. Just the other day, a neighbor lady smelled gas, and she informed the company, and they came out, and sure enough, there was a gas leak. When you have a cold, your sense of smell and taste leave you. That's a liability. So if we might, let's just confine ourselves tonight for these few moments together to the beautiful sensation and sensitivity to the aromas, fragrance, and smells that surround us now. If you happen to live near an industrial area, often you'll have the odor of smoke or whatever product that company might turn out. Years ago, when the wind blew from the south and the stockyards used to be operating on the south side of Chicago, anybody to the north of the stockyards had this very strong, rancid odor. They are no more, but I suppose they're replaced with other kinds of odors or smells or fragrances. If you happen to be into washing diapers, that can leave its own kind of impression upon your sense of smell. If you go through a field of honeysuckle, isn't that beautiful? And then soon you come upon a field that's just been fertilized. Wow, put the windows up again. Just trying to activate your sense of smell tonight. The Cascading Strings of the London Concert Orchestra, directed by Paul Mickelson. Sweet, sweet spirit in this place. We might even retitle that, just for the convenience of the moment and our subject tonight, Sweet, Sweet Fragrance in this place. Cleopatra, I understand, in history, resorted to the sweet mystery of perfume when she set out to capture the heart of Antony. She floated down the river on a barge, which was drenched in such haunting perfume that multitudes on the shore followed the craft with delight. Well, Cleopatra wasn't the first or the last lady to use this kind of alluring liquid, which seems to appeal so deeply to the opposite sex. Each year, women in America spend $150 million on perfume. Scientists are now beginning to discover the strange effects that potent fragrance has. Not only the ladies, but certainly one of the more recent industries has been cosmetics and perfume for men. We've been using aftershave lotion for as long as I can remember, but all of a sudden it takes on a rather elevated dimension. And to avoid giving any trade names or commercial products, let's just rename for a moment a perfume or a cologne by, say, a Bible name. Perhaps we would go to a counter and try to procure a vial of submission or compassion. Well, right across the aisle, most likely there is submission or compassion for men. Ever go through one of these rather expensive, higher class department stores and get near the cosmetics counter where they sell perfume? There again, we have another aura in an olfactory sense that is very pleasing. Well, this is certainly nothing new. Recent scientific findings indicate that certain fragrances bypass the reasoning areas of the brain, stimulate motor impulses, and act directly on the center that controls blushing, pounding of the heart, and release of hormones into the bloodstream. In short, perfume seems to be an enchantress which bypasses common sense. Some critics would like us to believe that the conversion experience is much like the spell that perfume casts, which is to say, while it might be beautiful and emotionally moving, it has little lasting value, and it bypasses common sense. Well, the critics concede that there might be a great sense of relief when guilt is gone, but the spell will wear off, and soon we'll come down to earth, probably more harmed than helped by the experience. And I suppose some so-called converts may encounter the divine and are merely momentarily mesmerized by the fragrance. And they soon settle back into their former patterns of living. However, by far, the great majority of converts find coming to Jesus Christ a deeply meaningful and life-changing experience. And they discover this to be the most rational thing they've ever done. Yet even to the most sincere convert to Christ, there come moments of doubt, where a new believer may be tempted to question the validity of his experience and needs reassurance. The other day, while leafing through a men's magazine, I happened to see an advertisement for a certain kind of cologne that, as the advertisers put it, was able to immediately attract the opposite sex to you, and they cannot resist you when you wear this particular cologne, which was being sold for a pretty high price. I admit, just for a slight moment there, I was a bit enchanted by it. I thought, hey, that's not a bad idea when we lack social graces or are not handsome or particularly talented. All we need to do is dab on a few drops of this and we have it made. It's interesting how our, what's the word, narcissistic compulsions are awakened by this kind of advertising. And of course, those who are into the ad business find that that's the name of the game, to entice the reader, the listener, the watcher, the buyer, to something beyond himself or herself, something that, without a whole lot of effort, will do something that can't usually be done by the powers that we possess. Well, odors and fragrances and aromas can be used in many different ways, both positively and negatively. In the Old Testament, we read of a sweet aroma to the Lord that came from certain sacrifices. That very famous portion of the Gospel of John, chapter 12, speaks of the power and significance of certain kinds of fragrances. Let's read chapter 12 for a couple of verses here, beginning at verse 1. This is the New King James translation. The text says, "Then 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom he had raised from the dead. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Mary took a pound of spikenard, anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. Then one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, who would betray him, said, 'Why was this fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?' This he said not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the money box, and he used to take what was put in it. Then Jesus said, 'Let her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial.' Often, myrrh was used as a burial ointment. Just a few moments before coming into the studio tonight, I was browsing in Smith's Bible Dictionary, and I found the heading of myrrh, and it said of it, it was a highly fragrant rosin, volatile oil, used as a cosmetic and stimulative as a medicine. This substance is mentioned in Exodus 30:23 as one of the ingredients of the oil of holy ointment. In Esther 2, verse 12 in the Old Testament, as one of the substances used in the purification of women, and in several passages in Canticles as a perfume. It was among the gifts brought by the wise men to the infant Jesus. And in Mark chapter 15 is said that wine mingled with myrrh was offered to but refused by our Lord on the cross. Myrrh was also used for embalming. And it goes on to elaborate even further about the uses of myrrh as a fragrance, as a preservative. Tonight, as we think of the Spirit of God as a sweet fragrance, perhaps we could not be too extreme to use that image as I sing once again this beautiful old song of prayer. Spirit of the living God, fall The program at hand is Nightsounds, and our title of togetherness tonight, Spiritual Perfume. In case we've just joined each other in the last few moments, I'm Bill Pearce, and we come together in this manner through this radio station almost every night during the week at this time, with a different kind of subject and topic, and reaching one another from a different direction. Tonight's subject, Spiritual Perfume, is a little bit oblique in its meaning, yet the overtones are tremendous, and as we continue, we want to stay right with this. May I just mention that Nightsounds reaches out farther than the program you're hearing. The sending of past program tapes that you may have taken to, or materials you may have heard, prayer support, friendship. This is a very special kind of relationship, and I value it highly. And I'd be delighted to hear from you. Our mailing address is Nightsounds, Wheaton, Illinois, 60189.
And for those of you with email, we're nightsoundsradio@aol.com. And I'd be delighted to have you join me on our website at nightsoundsradio.org.
The words fragrance, sweet aroma are used frequently throughout both the Old and New Testaments. I'm thinking of Paul the Apostle now, who came upon these words and used them in his discourse. One of the areas being the book of Philippians, chapter 4. He said in verse 18, I am amply supplied, now that I have received from Epaphroditus the gift you sent. They are a fragrant offering, an acceptable sacrifice, pleasing to God. Now that doesn't mean that they sent Paul vials of perfume and ointment. This was figuratively speaking. Many of the works we do for Jesus Christ can be, in essence, cups of cold water in His name, or a vial of fragrance, a sweet offering unto the Lord. You may recall, speaking of Paul, in his second epistle to the Corinthians, he said, We don't want you to be ignorant, brothers, of our troubles which came to us in Asia, that we were crushed beyond measure, above strength, so that we despaired even of life. Have you ever felt that way, or gone through an experience where you sensed that you were crushed and you were hopeless and impotent and there was such futility? In her book, Springs in the Valley, Mrs. Charles Coman reflected on this for a moment, and she used a figurative account that I'd like to read for you tonight. You smell delightfully fragrant, said the gravel walk to the bed of chamomile flowers under the window.
"We have been trodden on," replied the chamomiles.
"Does that cause it?" asked the gravel walk.
"Treading on me produces no sweetness."
"Our natures are different," answered the chamomiles. "Gravel walks become only the harder by being trodden upon, but the effect on our own selves is that if pressed and bruised when the dew is upon us, we give forth the sweet smell that you now delight in."
"Very delightful,"
replied the gravel walk. The overtones of this were brought out that trials come alike to the Christian and to the person who is a non-believer in Jesus Christ. The one grows bitter and hardened under the experience, while the other becomes mellow and Christ-like. It's essentially because their natures are different. "Oh, beautiful rose, please tell me, for I would like to know why I must crush your petals that sweet perfume may flow." O life that is clothed in beauty, perhaps like the beautiful rose, you will need to be crushed by suffering ere you give your best. Who knows? A life that is crushed by sorrow can feel for another's grief and send out that sweet perfume of love that will bring some heart relief. He knows how much we are needing of sorrow or suffering or test. Do not repine at your testing when called to pass under the rod. It is that life might the sweeter be and comes from the hand of God. Then let us rejoice when he sendeth some sorrow or hardship that tries us, and be glad to be crushed as the rose leaf, that a sweeter perfume may arise.
You
thank you, Lord, for the sweetness of your fragrance and of your perfume. Well, tonight, as we've come together with a little bit different kind of subject matter, I trust that it's reached you in some way. I was very much moved at that one bit of verse we read near the end there, where the rose was crushed, that it might bring forth sweet perfume to the Lord. Maybe you will need to go through some hardships and perhaps through the ringer, so that your best essence may come out. If guided by the Lord Jesus Christ, it shall happen to his glory and to your betterment. That goes for all of us who have yielded. Let's remember that his strength is made perfect in our weakness, and we may not be that great to look at. Our fragrance may not be that wonderful, but with his touch, it will become sweet as the rose. I don't mean to get over sentimental or poetic on you tonight. In fact, this has been one difficult program to pull off mechanically here tonight. I'm not sure why, but my prayer was to honor and lift up Jesus Christ, and anytime you do that, you run into spiritual conflict. Nonetheless, that too, if perseverance takes place, can bring out the best. So be it. Our mailing address, Nightsounds, Wheaton, Illinois, 60189. Till next time, a sweet aroma to you tomorrow, and until we meet again, good night.